The turning point came on a Tuesday morning, a day like any other, deceptively ordinary. I had just returned from the market, the thin nylon bags digging into my palms, when I realized I'd forgotten to buy plantains, Emeka's favorite. Panic surged through me like a rising tide. I stood frozen at the doorstep for a full minute, rehearsing excuses, wondering if I could rush back and still beat the clock. But before I could decide, I heard the metallic click of the gate. Emeka was home early. My heart dropped into my stomach. I turned the key and stepped inside like a thief. He met me in the living room, his eyes scanning the bags in my hands before locking onto my face. "Where are the plantains?" The question was quiet, but I knew better than to be fooled by the volume. I I forgot. I'll just run back and I didn't finish the sentence. His backhand landed with enough force to send my cheek into the wall. I dropped the bags, the tomatoes rolling out like blood from a wound. He didn't shout. He just stepped closer, grabbed my shoulders and shook me. "You had one job, Ada. One!" I nodded frantically, apologizing, tears already streaming down my face, not from pain but terror. He shoved me to the floor and walked away, slamming the door behind him. I lay there, surrounded by groceries, shaking, wondering if I'd ever breathe freely again. That night he came back with the plantains, fried them himself, served them to me like an apology. I chewed them slowly, my lips split, my soul unraveling thread by thread. Something inside me broke permanently that week. I stopped trying to fix things. I became a shell, obedient, quiet, efficient. I memorized Emeka's moods, learned the patterns of his rage, and adjusted myself accordingly. If he slammed his car door, I knew to stay out of sight. If he walked into the house humming, I'd breathe a little easier. He was the weather, and I was a woman in a leaky hut, constantly praying the storm would pass. But even storms, when they come often enough, reshape the landscape. My body bore silent testimony, a fractured rib once, bruises in fading hues, a dislocated shoulder I told the doctor was a fall. I became a master of lies. "I'm fine. I slipped. I'm just tired." No one asked too many questions. That's the problem with our society. We protect the abuser with silence. And I participated in that silence because I was ashamed, because I was scared, because I had nowhere else to go. My father's warnings haunted me. My mother's quiet disappointment echoed in my bones. And the church. Oh, the church told me to pray harder, fast more, be patient. "Marriage is a journey, Ada," my pastor's wife said once. "Sometimes the devil tests your commitment. But how do you stay committed to a man who sees you as a punching bag?" I wondered if Jesus wanted me to be a martyr in the name of matrimony. It wasn't just the physical abuse, it was the isolation, the psychological imprisonment. Emeka began to destroy me in ways that left no visible marks. He cut off my access to money, forcing me to beg for even the smallest things, sanitary pads, toiletries, airtime. If I upset him, he would withhold money, meals, even water. Once he locked the fridge and took the keys with him for 3 days. I lived on dry Gary and faucet water. The house became a prison I couldn't escape. He installed cameras, claiming it was for our safety, but I knew better. He was watching me, every move, every breath, and then came the gaslighting. "You're lucky to have me," he'd say. "No other man would tolerate a woman like you." I started to believe him. Maybe I was difficult. Maybe I deserved it. After all, I forgot the plantains. After all, I once talked back. After all, I'd gained weight, lost my glow. I internalized every insult until they became my truth. And when I'd had enough, when I tried to stand up for myself, he'd turn on the charm. He'd cry, beg, promise to change. "Let's go for counselling," he once suggested. I agreed, hopeful. We went once. He charmed the therapist too. The next day, he said I embarrassed him and punched me in the gut so hard I vomited blood. I stopped hoping after that. Yet in the strangest twist of irony, it was motherhood that saved me. Not in the warm, joyful way one would expect, but in the cold terror of protecting someone more helpless than myself. I discovered I was pregnant after a particularly brutal night. He had raped me, yes, I call it that now, because he demanded sex when I was too broken to refuse, and I laid there like a corpse. When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't feel joy. I felt dread. I knew what Emeka would do to a child that annoyed him. What if it was a girl and she dropped her cup too loudly? What if it was a boy and he cried too much? I saw the future like a horror movie playing behind my eyes. But when I told him, Emeka was overjoyed. He wept like a man reborn. "A baby," he said, lifting me in the air. "We're going to be a family." For 2 months, he changed. He was gentle. He cooked. He kissed my stomach. He talked to the baby. I thought foolishly that maybe this child was my redemption, that maybe love could still be salvaged from the ruins. But violence is not a temporary habit. It is a hunger. And Emeka, despite his lull, remained famished. It started again in the 3rd trimester. I had gained weight, moved slower. He called me lazy. He refused to let me hire help, so I cleaned on swollen feet. One day I accidentally spilled hot water on the kitchen floor and he slipped. He roared like a lion and kicked me in the stomach. I screamed so loud the neighbours knocked. He told them I was in labour. I lost the baby 2 days later. A girl, 7 months along. I held her tiny, lifeless body in my arms and wept until my throat burned. I named her Chisholm. God is with me. I buried her alone. Emeka didn't come to the hospital. He said he was too busy. When I returned home, he handed me a wrapped gift. "You'll be fine," he said. It was a blender. Something inside me finally snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just nodded and made jollof rice with it that night. He ate, I watched, and I planned. Her silence was her sentence. Her voice became her freedom. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside him, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, each breath a reminder that he still had power over me. But something had shifted. The pain of losing Chisholm, of holding her lifeless body, had carved out a hollow inside me so deep there was nothing left for fear to inhabit. I wasn't just grieving a child. I was mourning myself. The woman I used to be. The girl who laughed too loud, who danced in the rain, who believed love was enough. That girl had died a slow death over the years, and now her coffin had been nailed shut by the man who once vowed to love and protect her. I stared at Emeka, this man with whom I had once dreamed of forever, and all I saw was ruin. A ruin I had allowed, a ruin I had decorated, but not anymore. Something inside me was alive again. Not love, not hope, but defiance. Cold, calculating defiance. I didn't know how or when, but I knew one thing: I was going to leave. And this time I would not be crawling away. I would be walking, head held high, even if my legs trembled beneath me. The days that followed were an act of theatre. I smiled when he came home, cooked his meals, laughed at his jokes. I made love to him when he demanded it, all the while counting days and rationing courage. I began hiding money, selling my jewellery, sewing wrappers into hidden compartments in my bags, keeping a small bag buried under the kitchen sink. I reached out to an old friend, Nkechi, through a burner phone I bought from a roadside vendor. She had always suspected something was wrong, but had never pressed. When I told her the truth, she cried. "Ada, you're not alone," she said. "Come to me when you're ready." It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of pretending, of walking on eggshells while secretly building wings. And then the final straw came on a Sunday morning. I had ironed his clothes, made his breakfast, even polished his shoes. Yet he claimed the tea was too cold. Before I could blink, he poured the entire cup on my lap. The scalding pain made me scream. He slapped me across the face, then walked out to church as if nothing happened. I sat there, burnt thighs trembling, heart pounding, rage bubbling in a place I didn't know still existed. That was the day I chose myself. I waited until night. I packed nothing but the essentials: ID card, the small savings I had managed to hide, a change of clothes, my worn-out Bible. I wore 3 wrappers and an old hoodie to disguise my shape. I wrote a short note. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't look for me. Don't ever look for me." I didn't care if he did. By the time he woke up, I would be long gone. I climbed out the window like a fugitive, heart in my throat. My legs shook as I walked down the street, every car light a threat, every shadow a warning. But I made it. I got to Nkechi's house by dawn, and she wrapped me in the kind of embrace I hadn't felt in years. Warm, honest, safe. For the first time in forever, I slept for 12 hours straight. I woke up disoriented, afraid, but free. She took me to the police. I told my story. They asked for proof. I showed them the scars, the hospital reports, the bruises that hadn't faded. They took pictures, filed reports, but I could see it in their eyes, the doubt, the dismissal. In our society, men are kings and women are warriors without swords. But I had a voice, and I was going to use it. The journey after leaving wasn't easy. Amika found out where I was and began sending messages. First, threats. Then apologies, then threats again. I blocked him. He tried my family. My father told him I was dead to them. For the first time in my life, I thanked that old man for something. I started therapy, free sessions at a women's support centre. I broke down the first day, unable to talk for 20 straight minutes. Just sobs. But each session helped chip away the shame. I began to volunteer at the centre, sharing my story anonymously. I met other women, bankers, teachers, even pastors' wives who had lived similar nightmares. We formed a sisterhood, a wall of voices that refused to be silenced. I got a job teaching at a community school. I rented a room, small but mine. I bought a second-hand mattress and painted the walls pink. I bought myself flowers. I took myself to the movies. I laughed again, not the rehearsed robotic laugh Amika used to demand, but a laugh that came from deep inside my chest. I danced in front of the mirror. I wrote poems. I started living again. 2 years later, I published my story online under a pseudonym. It went viral. Messages poured in, some in support, others in attack. Why didn't you leave sooner, they asked. As if it were that simple. As if trauma doesn't wear the same clothes as loyalty. As if fear doesn't sound like a lullaby when it's all you know. But I didn't care. I had spoken. I began speaking at conferences, schools, churches. The same churches that once told me to fast and pray now invited me to teach them how to protect their daughters. Amika, he remarried quickly. His new wife reached out to me once, desperate, broken. I told to run. I don't know if she did. Some people never escape. But I had, and that was enough. I started a foundation, Chisholm's Voice, to support women fleeing abusive homes. It's ironic, isn't it? My daughter, who never took a breath in this world, gave breath to hundreds of others. Through her memory, I found my mission. Through her death, I found my life. People often ask me if I've forgiven him. My answer is simple. I've forgiven myself for staying too long, for being afraid, for forgetting who I was. Amika doesn't deserve space in my healing. My freedom isn't for him, it's for me. I still bear the scars, physical and emotional. Some nights I still wake up sweating, heart racing, ears straining for footsteps that no longer come. But those nights are fewer now. The sun rises a little warmer, the wind feels gentler, and my heart, though stitched and patched, beats with purpose. I am not just a survivor. I am a warrior, a mother, a storyteller. And this is not just my story. It's the story of every woman silenced by fear, of every child born into violence, of every vow that turned into a weapon. And if you're reading this and you're still stuck in the storm, run. Don't wait for the sun. Be your own light. The world may not believe you, but your truth matters. You matter. You are not alone. You never were.